Thanks, Lucius, and thanks everyone. I've been given the unenviable job of summarizing what's happened over the last 2 years. It seems like 10 years, but I'll try my best. So I'm presenting on behalf of a lot of folks from the Network System Science and Advanced Computing Division, and I'll give a bird's eye view of what we've done during the COVID-19 response. So just for background, the NSAC division studies massive interacting biological and socio-technical systems, and we study this through the lens of network science, data science, computational science, and we can add contagion science to it now. And to some extent, for the past 20 years, like several members of the group have been doing modeling and data analytics and supporting policy response for infectious diseases. And there are a lot of research questions inside the group, but if you want to summarize them in a high level, these keep repeating in various projects that we do. So the first question is how to best represent the underlying populations and processes. For instance, if you're studying epidemics or if you're studying pest dynamics, there's always a challenge with respect to data available, the time scale within which they need a response. So we always go back and forth on building these synthetic representations that best capture the phenomena for the question at hand. And while doing that, we also step back and ask what kind of data sets, simulations, and software are needed to do this at scale. Because even though the data sets are not available right now, or the computing capabilities don't exist, we would like to envision doing this at scale, because as we have seen in COVID-19 response, we've had to scale it up, and it's best to do it during peacetime rather than during wartime. And a significant portion of the group also focuses on like theoretical computer science, and we have a lot of domain experts in cognitive science, biology, and economics. So there's always this question of how do you merge theory and practice, and especially when you're doing real-time policy support. So when it comes to COVID-19, I'll just, since we are talking about multiple scales, I'll just focus on three different scales. The first being at the state level. So this is an engagement that's been ongoing for more than 2 years now, starting March 2020. And we've been supporting the state of Virginia, especially through the engagement with Virginia Department of Health. And in addition to them, we've also engaged with the Virginia Department of Emergency Management, the Department of Education, and also the Hospital and Healthcare Association. And it's the best way to summarize this is it's been multi-pronged. So in some sense, like the core that most people get to see is this model projections that we do on a weekly basis, understanding like what might happen under different scenarios, integrating the best information that we have on the current state of the pandemic. And we've also built dashboards, kind of summarize this for the policymakers, say, summarizing the surveillance at the global level, or doing hospital resource demand and other specific use cases. But I just wanted to use this diagram to kind of go clockwise from there, walk through some other interesting pieces that we have touched. For instance, we have partnered with a private company, Metaculus, and Virginia Department of Health to study the role of human judgment in forecasting these epidemics. And also, like we've engaged with different subdivisions of the Department of Health to do resource allocation, because there are questions on optimizing effort for contact tracing, or more recently for therapeutics, anticipating the demand. So a lot of these piggyback on the projections, but also require specific modeling. And we've also done mobility assessment. So using near real-time data sets from companies like SafeGraph, we try to track visit frequencies at different locations so that we can optimally place vaccine allocation sites, or even understand the role of different mobility restrictions. And one of the threads, I think Amy Meadows talked about, like the importance of sequencing and sampling at various resolutions. So this is a project that focuses on understanding the role of genomic sequencing and how it can predict the emergence of novel variants or the impact it might have on the epidemic dynamics. We've also done a lot of surveillance analytics, so almost augmenting the kind of public view that VDH provides through their dashboards, through like very focused analysis, and also providing them up-to-date information from summarizing various preprints. So these have happened over the past 2 years, and it's almost a blur that every time we have this call on Wednesdays at 4 p.m., it seems like Groundhog Day. But like it's been like more than 100 weeks of doing this Sean, I think Brian, Andrew, and others are on the call who've done this over the past 2 years. So just zooming out to the national scale, we've done some pieces of this with the national effort also, especially with the CDC coordinated hubs. We have participated in two major efforts. One is the Forecast Hub, which is a group of teams across like 40 to 50 different modeling teams across the US, trying to forecast the short-term trends of the pandemic. But we've also participated in the scenario modeling hub, which is a very similar effort to what we do in VDH, but the scenarios are more coordinated across teams. And these have been very influential in informing policymakers, especially during the rollout of boosters or childhood vaccinations. And one of the recent scenarios that we did was, for example, understanding the impact of a reformulated booster campaign in fall 2022 in the presence of waning dynamics. So it's very pertinent and trying to inform questions that are being discussed by, for instance, ASIP and others. And additionally, we have also done similar modeling and weekly projections for our federal partners at DRITRA. And through funding agencies such as NSF and NIH, we've built a lot of these open source data sets. So we don't want this to remain as like a 2-year effort that we have to restart from scratch. So building these open source data sets allows us or others to continue this. And I think Madhav mentioned these two programs, like one, this is a different prepare than the Contagion Science Prepare. This is a program funded by NSF to collect together insights and building the community across a lot of the NSF rapids that are funded over the last 2 years. And similarly, the NSF Expedition Program brings together cutting edge science and computational epidemiology. And just quickly zooming out further, this has been personally rewarding for me because I got to interact with my alma mater, Indian Institute of Science. We've partnered with folks at Indian Institute of Science and also Indian Statistical Institute in Bangalore to support the Karnataka state's COVID-19 response. And this has been ongoing for nearly 2 years and supporting at various key phases, such as rollout of vaccines during the Delta wave, or understanding the role of weekend and weeknight curfews during the Omicron wave. So it's been very pertinent and very informative to do this in a data poor setting, but also a different kind of a dynamics where we are building models and then they run it and then we have to interact remotely. And we've also helped them set up Indian version of the forecaster because we've realized that these multiple models provide more insights than depending upon single models. And we have interacted with Google Research, US and India to kind of use their very unique view into this global mobility during this pandemic to understand, compare and contrast different countries. And we've also done it at a very local level, almost like studying the role of suburban railway systems on the pandemic spread in cities. And recently, we've also started this multi-site project involving IISc, ISI, but also folks from Princeton, CDEP to expand this biosurveillance to this international context. And we've also participated in this European version of Forecast Hub and Scenario. So that's a lot of pieces and a lot of folks on the call have touched this. But I just want to give this perspective so that we have in mind that the contagion science is not something that we can solve at one scale and let it go. We have to kind of operate across scales. And I hope we can bring in expertise from a lot of folks to do this. So just closing, I think this is really exciting to see this emerge as the paradigm that we'll work on. This is one more layer on top of network science. The way people talk of network science, it's one more layer on graph theory and processes, but contagion science takes it one level further. And I think we need a lot of brainstorming sessions to kind of catch up on literature and kind of identify modeling gaps, data gaps. And I think this might be ambitious, but it might be helpful to think about building unified data and modeling platforms so that it will enable effective collaborations. And again, as Madhav pointed out in the beginning, identifying key funding agencies and doing program development so that can be sustained beyond this 5 years. So I'll stop there and hand it over to Lucius.